On March 3, 2019, Jennifer Hayes received a text message that made her drop her coffee cup. The message came from a number she'd memorized years ago, a number that had been dead and silent for 7 years. The text was simple, just 3 words. Mom, I'm okay. The number belonged to her daughter Rachel Hayes, who had vanished without a trace on April 12, 2012. Rachel, who'd been missing for 7 years. Until that March morning in 2019. Jennifer stared at her phone screen, hands shaking, reading those 3 words over and over. She called the number immediately. It rang, but nobody answered. Over the next 6 weeks, more messages arrived. Each one more mysterious than each one opening questions nobody had thought to ask. And when police finally traced those messages and found Rachel Hayes alive, what they discovered was so strange, so unexpected, that it changed everything they thought they knew about missing persons. This is the story of Rachel Hayes, and the 7 years she spent living a life her family never knew existed. If you're drawn to real cases and want to join a community that genuinely cares about these stories and searches for the truth, make sure to subscribe and like this video. We don't forget these people. New cases every day. Now, let's begin. Life her family never knew existed. Rachel Marie Hayes was born in June 1993 in Portland, Oregon. She was the younger of 2 daughters born to Jennifer and Michael Hayes. Her older sister Ashley was 21 in 2012 when Rachel disappeared. Rachel was 19. The Hayes family was solidly middle class. Michael worked as an accountant for a manufacturing company. Jennifer was a high school English teacher. They lived in a comfortable house in the Selwood neighborhood of Portland, a tree-lined area popular with families. Rachel had always been the quieter daughter. Ashley was outgoing, popular, the kind of teenager who had a million friends and constant plans. Rachel was more introspective, thoughtful, spent hours reading or drawing in her room. She wasn't antisocial. She had friends, went to parties sometimes, participated in school activities. But she was the kind of person who needed alone time to recharge, who preferred deep conversations with a few close friends over large social gatherings. In high school, Rachel had struggled with anxiety and mild depression. She'd seen a therapist during her junior year, had been on medication briefly, but seemed to stabilize by senior year. Her parents had been concerned, but thought she was managing well. She graduated from Cleveland High School in June 2011 with decent grades. Not spectacular, but respectable. She'd been accepted to Portland State University and had started classes in the fall of 2011, declaring a major in environmental science. Rachel was passionate about nature and sustainability. She volunteered at the Oregon Zoo, worked part-time at a local coffee shop, talked about eventually working in conservation or environmental policy. She seemed to have direction, purpose, a plan for her future. But people who knew Rachel well said she'd always seemed a bit disconnected from the life around her. Like she was going through the motions of what was expected rather than what she actually wanted. Her best friend from high school, Emma Chen, later told investigators that Rachel had sometimes talked about wanting to disappear into the woods and live off the grid. At the time, Emma had thought Rachel was joking. Everyone said things like that when they were stressed about exams or tired of social media. Nobody took it literally. In early 2012, during her second semester at Portland State, Rachel seemed to be struggling. Her grades were slipping. She'd quit her job at the coffee shop, saying she needed to focus on school, but then didn't seem to be focusing on school either. Jennifer noticed Rachel seemed more withdrawn than usual. She'd come home from classes and go straight to her room. She'd stop talking about her future plan. When Jennifer asked if everything was okay, Rachel would say she was fine, just tired, just stressed about classes. Michael thought it was normal college adjustment. Lots of students struggled in their first year. He suggested maybe Rachel should take a lighter course load, give herself time to adjust. Rachel said she'd think about it. Ashley, who was living in Seattle working her first post-college job, called Rachel every week. The calls got shorter as winter turned to spring. Rachel seemed distracted, gave short answers, said she was busy and had to go. Ashley assumed Rachel was just growing up, becoming more independent. Nobody realized Rachel was planning something. On April 12, 2012, Rachel left her dorm room at Portland State around 10 a.m. She was wearing jeans, a green hoodie, carrying her backpack like she was heading to class. Her roommate, Sarah Mitchell, saw her leave and said goodbye. Rachel waved and smiled. That was the last time anyone who knew Rachel Hayes saw her. Rachel didn't go to her 11 a.m. environmental policy class. She didn't show up for her 2 p.m. lab. By evening, when she hadn't come back to the dorm, Sarah started to worry but not panic. Rachel sometimes studied at the library late. But when Rachel didn't come back that night and didn't answer her phone, Sarah called Jennifer Hayes. Jennifer tried calling Rachel's phone repeatedly. It rang but went to voicemail every time. She left messages asking Rachel to call back, saying she wasn't mad, just wanted to know she was okay. By midnight, Jennifer called campus security. They checked Rachel's dorm room. Her laptop was there, her textbooks were there, her wallet and ID were there. Her phone charger was plugged in by her bed. The only things missing were Rachel herself, her phone, and her backpack. Campus security checked the library, the student union, the places Rachel usually studied. No sign of her. They reviewed security camera footage. Cameras caught Rachel leaving her dorm at 10:03 a.m., walking across campus toward the Max light rail station. The Max station cameras showed Rachel boarding the eastbound train at 10:17 a.m. She sat near the back, looking at her phone, appearing calm, and she got off the train at the Gateway Transit Center, a major hub where multiple train lines intersected. And then Rachel Hayes disappeared from every camera, every record, every trace. Police were called in immediately. Detective Mark Sullivan took the case. He'd worked missing persons for 15 years, had seen every variation of runaway teenagers and college students who needed space. But something about Rachel's disappearance felt different. She'd taken her phone, but left her laptop. She'd left her wallet with her ID and bank cards. She hadn't withdrawn large amounts of money in the days before disappearing. Her bank records showed normal small purchases, nothing unusual. Detective Sullivan interviewed Rachel's friends, classmates, professors. Everyone said Rachel had seemed quiet lately, maybe a bit distant, but not suicidal, not in crisis, not someone who seemed about to vanish. Emma Chen mentioned Rachel's comments about living off the grid, but said Rachel talked about a lot of things. She was a thoughtful person who wondered about alternative ways of living. That didn't mean she'd actually do it. Rachel's phone records showed normal usage in the weeks before she disappeared. Calls to her mom, her sister, her friends, text conversations about homework and plans to get coffee. Nothing that suggested she was planning to run away. The last ping from Rachel's phone was at 10:34 a.m. on April 12th, near the Gateway Transit Center. After that, the phone went completely dead. Either it was turned off, the battery died, or it was destroyed. For 7 years, that phone never turned on again. Never pinged a cell tower, never connected to Wi-Fi, never gave any signal that it existed. Police searched extensively. They checked hospitals, homeless shelters, bus stations. They interviewed dozens of people who'd been at the Gateway Transit Center that morning. They reviewed hours of security footage from nearby businesses. Rachel had simply vanished into thin air. The Hayes family was devastated. Jennifer took a leave of absence from teaching. Michael threw himself into the search, printing thousands of flyers, organizing volunteer search parties, appearing on local news begging for information. Ashley came home from Seattle to help. The three of them spent weeks searching parks, walking trails Rachel had liked, talking to anyone who might have seen her. But there were no leads, no sightings, no evidence of where Rachel had gone or why. The first year after Rachel disappeared was a blur of desperate searching, false hope, and crushing disappointment. Every time the phone rang, Jennifer's heart stopped, thinking maybe this time it was news. Usually it was just another dead-end tip, or someone calling to express sympathy. Michael hired a private investigator 6 months after Rachel vanished. The investigator worked the case for a year, following leads that all went nowhere. They spent $15,000 they didn't really have, money that had been saved for Rachel's college tuition, before finally accepting that the investigator couldn't find anything the police hadn't already found. Ashley moved back to Portland to be closer to her parents. She couldn't stand being in Seattle while her sister was missing. Couldn't focus on her job or her life when her family was falling apart. She got a new job in Portland and moved into her old childhood bedroom. The house felt haunted by Rachel's absence. Her room remained exactly as she'd left it the morning of April 12, 2012. Jennifer couldn't bear to change anything, as if keeping Rachel's space intact might somehow bring her back. The Hayes family joined a support group for families of missing persons. They met every Tuesday night at a community center, sitting in a circle with other parents, siblings, spouses who knew the particular agony of not knowing. Some people in the group had been searching for 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. Some had eventually found their loved ones, usually dead, occasionally alive with complicated explanations. Most were still searching, still hoping, still living in the terrible limbo between grief and hope. Jennifer found the group both helpful and heartbreaking. It was good to be around people who understood, who didn't say stupid things like, "Maybe it's time to move on," or "You need to accept she's probably gone." But it was painful to see people who'd been searching even longer than she had, to realize this might be her life forever. Detective Sullivan kept the case open, but had to acknowledge after the first year that without new evidence, there wasn't much more he could do. He called Jennifer every few months to check in, to let her know he hadn't forgotten Rachel, but he had no new leads to pursue. The second anniversary of Rachel's disappearance was brutal. The family held a small vigil at the Gateway Transit Center, the last place Rachel had been seen on camera. About 50 people showed up: family, friends, members of the support group, a few reporters. Jennifer spoke briefly, fighting back tears, begging anyone who knew anything to come forward. Michael stood beside her, looking like he'd aged 20 years in two. Ashley handed out flyers with Rachel's photo and the tip line number. The vigil made local news but generated no new leads. By year 3, the harsh reality was setting in. Rachel was likely dead. Either she'd met with foul play shortly after disappearing, or she'd hurt herself and her body hadn't been found. The odds of finding her alive after 3 years were statistically almost zero. But Jennifer refused to give up hope entirely. She couldn't. Hope was the only thing keeping her functional. Michael dealt with the trauma differently. He became obsessed with researching missing persons cases, reading about people who'd disappeared and been found alive years later. He created spreadsheets of cases, looking for patterns, looking for hope. He found stories that kept him going. Elizabeth Smart, found after 9 months. J.C. Dugard, found after 18 years. Women who'd been held captive but survived and came home. Maybe Rachel was out there somewhere, unable to get away, waiting to be rescued. Ashley struggled with guilt. She'd been Rachel's big sister. Should have been more attentive, should have noticed something was wrong. She replayed every conversation from those last few months, looking for signs she'd missed, warnings she'd ignored. Her therapist told her this was normal but unhelpful. Ashley couldn't have prevented Rachel's disappearance because she hadn't known it was going to happen. But logic didn't make the guilt go away. The Hayes family's life became divided into before and after. Before April 12, 2012, they'd been a normal family with normal problems. After that date, they were a family defined by loss, forever marked by tragedy. Jennifer returned to teaching after a year but found it exhausting. Her students didn't know about Rachel unless they looked it up online, and she preferred to keep her professional life separate from her personal trauma. But it was hard to teach English literature and talk about themes of loss and grief without thinking about her missing daughter. Michael stayed at his accounting job, using work as an escape. Numbers didn't ask questions. Spreadsheets didn't require emotional processing. He could lose himself in balance sheets and quarterly reports, temporarily forgetting the imbalance in his own life. By year 5, the case was cold. Detective Sullivan had retired, and the case was reassigned to a younger detective who reviewed it periodically but had no active leads to pursue. Rachel's case appeared occasionally in cold case features in local media, usually around the anniversary of her disappearance. Each story brought a brief flurry of tips, supposed sightings that were either mistaken identity or people seeking attention. Jennifer still checked Rachel's social media accounts daily, hoping for any sign of activity. Rachel's Facebook page had become a memorial, with friends posting memories and birthday wishes to an account that never responded. Her Instagram hadn't been updated since April 11, 2012. A photo of a sunset she'd taken from her dorm room window. The Hayes family had to make painful legal decisions. After 5 years, they could have Rachel declared legally dead, which would allow them to access her bank accounts, settle her student loans, close certain legal issues. Jennifer refused. As long as Rachel wasn't declared dead, there was still hope. Michael understood but worried about the practical implications. They compromised by putting the decision off, year after year, unable to take that final step. By year 7, the Hayes family had learned to live with chronic grief. It never went away, never got easier exactly, but they'd developed coping mechanisms. They'd learned to function while carrying constant. Jennifer had moments of joy, student successes, time with Ashley, small pleasures. But underneath everything was always the awareness that Rachel was gone. Michael had stopped his obsessive research, accepting that hope without evidence was torture. Ashley had built a life in Portland, with a job she liked and a boyfriend who understood about her missing sister. They all thought they'd accepted that they might never know what happened to Rachel. Then Rachel's phone turned on. March 3, 2019 started as an ordinary Sunday. Jennifer was grading essays at the kitchen table, drinking her second cup of coffee, when her phone buzzed with a text message. She glanced at it casually, expecting a message from Ashley or maybe one of her teacher colleagues. Instead, she saw a number she'd memorized 7 years ago, Rachel's number. The message read, "Mom, I'm okay." Jennifer's coffee cup slipped from her hand, shattering on the floor. Coffee spread across the tile, but she didn't notice. She stared at her phone screen, reading the message over and over, her brain refusing to process what she was seeing. Michael came running from the garage when he heard the crash. He found Jennifer sitting frozen at the table, phone clutched in both hands, tears streaming down her face. What happened? What's wrong? Jennifer couldn't speak. She just handed him the phone. Michael read the message, went pale, sat down heavily in the chair next to her. For several minutes, they just sat there in stunned silence, staring at 3 words on a screen. Ashley was the first to act with any logic. She'd come over for Sunday brunch and arrived to find her parents sitting paralyzed at the kitchen table, broken coffee cup on the floor, both of them crying. When she saw the message, her hands started shaking. But she forced herself to think clearly. "We need to call the police, right now." Jennifer called Detective Sullivan, even though he'd retired. She had his personal number, had stayed in occasional contact over the years. Sullivan answered immediately when he saw Jennifer's number. "Jennifer? What's wrong?" "Rachel's phone. It's on. She sent a message." There was a long pause. "I'm calling the current detective on the case. Don't respond to the message yet. Don't do anything until someone gets there." Within an hour, Detective Laura Chen arrived at the Hayes house. She was young, mid-30s, had inherited Rachel's cold case file when she joined the missing persons unit 2 years earlier. Chen examined the message carefully. "Have there been any other messages?" "No, just that one." "Okay, I'm going to get our tech team to trace this. In the meantime, I need you to try calling the number. Put it on speaker." Jennifer's hand shook as she pressed call. The phone rang. Actually rang. For 7 years, calling Rachel's number had gone straight to a number no longer in service message. Now it was ringing. It rang 6 times, then went to voicemail. Rachel's voice, recorded 7 years ago, chipper and young. "Hey, it's Rachel. Leave a message." Jennifer sobbed, hearing her daughter's voice. Ashley grabbed her hand. Chen made notes. "The phone is on, active, connected to a cellular network. This is huge. Our tech team will start tracking it immediately." Over the next hour, as the Hayes family sat in their living room in a state of shock, Chen coordinated with the tech team. The news was both exciting and frustrating. Rachel's phone had pinged off a cell tower in Bend, Oregon, a city about 160 miles southeast of Portland, on the other side of the Cascade Mountains. The phone was on, active, but now wasn't responding to calls. The text had been sent at 9:47 a.m. Since then, nothing. Could someone have found her phone? Michael asked. Maybe Rachel's been dead all along, and someone just found her phone and turned it on? Chen considered this. Possible. But if someone found an old phone, why would they text, "Mom, I'm okay," to one of the contacts? That's a very specific message. "So you think Rachel sent it?" Jennifer's voice was barely a whisper. "I think there's a real possibility Rachel is alive and has her phone, which would raise a lot of questions about the last 7 years. The tech team was able to determine that Rachel's phone had been turned on for the first time in 7 years, at approximately 9:30. It had connected to Wi-Fi at a location in Bend, sent the text message, then been turned off again at 9:52 a.m. The Wi-Fi connection was traced to a coffee shop called Mountain View Roasters in downtown Bend. "We're sending officers there immediately," Chen told the family. "If Rachel was just there 20 minutes ago, maybe someone at the shop saw her." The next hours were agonizing. The Hayes family sat together, unable to do anything but wait. Jennifer couldn't stop staring at the message. "Mom, I'm okay." 3 words. After 7 years of silence, Rachel had sent 3 words. What did it mean? Was she okay? If she was okay, where had she been? Why had she disappeared? Why contact them now after so long? Officers in Bend went to Mountain View Roasters. The shop was moderately busy with Sunday morning customers. The manager said dozens of people had been in that morning, many using the Wi-Fi. He didn't remember anyone matching Rachel's description, but he admitted he didn't look closely at most customers. The shop's security cameras were. At 9:43 a.m., a young woman entered the shop, ordered a coffee, sat in the corner with a phone, then left at 9:51 a.m. She wore a baseball cap and sunglasses, kept her head down, but the build and height were consistent with Rachel. The footage wasn't clear enough to make a positive ID, but it was promising. 3 days later, another message arrived. Jennifer was in the middle of teaching a class when her phone buzzed. She looked down and saw Rachel's number again. "I'm sorry I left. I needed to go." Jennifer excused herself from class, hands shaking, and called Ashley and Michael. They conference called Detective Chen. This message had been sent from Bend again, from the same coffee shop. Officers were dispatched immediately, but by the time they arrived, whoever had sent the message was gone. The pattern continued over the next month. Every few days, a new message would arrive. Each one brief, cryptic, raising more questions than it answered. "I built a new life. I'm happy. Please don't look for me. I'm where I need to be. Tell Ashley I love her. Tell Dad I'm sorry." Each message was sent from different locations in Bend: coffee shops, the public library, a bookstore with free Wi-Fi. Rachel, or whoever had her phone, was staying in the Bend area, but was careful never to be caught on camera clearly enough for positive identification. Detective Chen established a team in Bend working with local police. They staked out the locations where messages had been sent, hoping to catch Rachel in person. The messages suggested Rachel was alive, was in Bend, and most puzzlingly, didn't want to be found. "If she's okay and just wants to be left alone, why message at all?" Ashley asked during one of many family meetings with Chen. "That's the question," Chen agreed. "If she wanted to stay hidden, the smart thing would be to never turn on her old phone. By messaging you, she's taking a risk. So there must be a reason she wants you to know she's alive, even if she doesn't want to come home." Jennifer clung to hope. Rachel was alive. After 7 years of not knowing, they finally knew Rachel was alive. That was huge. That changed everything. But Michael was more skeptical. If she's been alive this whole time, living in Bend, living a normal life, why did she put us through 7 years of hell? Why let us think she was dead? It was the question they all wrestled with. What could possibly justify abandoning your family for 7 years, making your parents think you were dead, letting them suffer? And if Rachel had her reasons, if there was some explanation that made sense, why wasn't she sharing it? Why these cryptic messages instead of actual communication? The 13th message, arriving on April 10th, 2019, was different. "I'll meet you. Just you, Mom, tomorrow. 2 p.m. Pilot Butte State Park in Bend. Come alone." Jennifer read the message 50 times before she showed it to anyone. Rachel wanted to meet. After 7 years, Rachel wanted to see her. When she finally told Michael and Ashley, their reactions were immediate and strong. "Absolutely not," Michael said firmly. "This could be dangerous. We don't know who's really sending these messages. You can't go alone to meet someone in a remote location." "It's Rachel," Jennifer insisted. "I know it's her." "You don't know that for sure," Ashley argued. "Even if it is Rachel, we don't know what her mental state is. You shouldn't go alone." Detective Chen was equally concerned when Jennifer called her. "I strongly advise against this. If Rachel is alive and wants to meet, she should come to a police station where we can ensure everyone's safety." But Jennifer was determined. "If I show up with police, she'll run. She's stayed hidden for 7 years. Clearly she knows how to disappear. This might be my only chance." They reached a compromise. Jennifer would go to the meeting, but she'd wear a wire so police could listen. Officers would be positioned around the park, out of sight, but ready to intervene if necessary. Chen would coordinate the operation from a van nearby. April 11th, 2019. Jennifer barely slept the night before. She kept thinking about what she'd say to Rachel. Should she be angry? Relieved? She'd imagined this reunion thousands of times over 7 years. but never like this. Michael drove Jennifer to Bend that morning with Ashley in the back seat. The 3-hour drive was mostly silent, each of them lost in their own thoughts. They met Detective Chen at the Bend Police Department. A tech fitted Jennifer with a small microphone. Chen reviewed the plan one more time. We'll have officers positioned around the park in civilian clothes. If at any point you feel unsafe, use the code word sunshine, and we'll move in immediately. Try to keep Rachel talking. The longer she stays, the better chance we have of understanding what's going on. At 1:45 p.m., Michael dropped Jennifer at Pilot Butte State Park. The park was built around an extinct volcanic cinder cone, with a trail that wound up to the summit offering panoramic views of Bend and the Cascade Mountains. Jennifer walked slowly up the trail, heart pounding. Was Rachel really going to be there? Would she recognize her own daughter after 7 years? At the summit, there were a few other hikers taking photos and enjoying the view. Jennifer stood near the viewing platform, scanning faces, waiting. At 2:03 p.m., a young woman approached. She wore jeans and a faded green jacket, had long brown hair pulled back in a ponytail, sunglasses covering her eyes. She stopped a few feet away and took off the sunglasses. It was Rachel, older, thinner, with a few lines around her eyes that hadn't been there at 19, but unmistakably Rachel. Jennifer couldn't move, couldn't speak. 7 years of grief and hope and pain all crashed over her at once. "Hi, Mom," Rachel said quietly. Jennifer burst into tears. She stepped forward to hug her daughter, but Rachel stepped back, holding up a hand. "Please don't. I can't. If you touch me, I'll break down, and I need to explain first." In Detective Chen's surveillance van, every officer was tense, listening to the conversation through Jennifer's wire. "Are you okay?" Jennifer managed to ask through tears. "Have you been hurt? Are you in danger?" "I'm okay. I'm safe. I'm not in danger." Rachel looked around nervously. "Are you alone? Did you bring police?" Jennifer hesitated. "They're here, watching. They won't interfere unless you're in danger." Rachel nodded, looking resigned. "I figured. It's okay. I expected it." "Rachel, please, I need to understand. Where have you been? What happened? We thought you were dead." Rachel sat down on a bench overlooking the mountains. Jennifer sat next to her, maintaining the distance Rachel seemed to need. "I left," Rachel said simply. "I planned it for months. I saved money, figured out where I'd go, how I'd disappear. And then on April 12th, I got on that train and I got off at Gateway, and I got on a bus to Bend and I started over." "But why?" Jennifer's voice broke. "What did we do? Were you unhappy? Were we bad parents?" "No," Rachel said quickly. "You were great parents. You didn't do anything wrong. That's not why I left." "Then why?" Rachel was quiet for a long moment, staring out at the mountains. "I didn't know how to be the person everyone expected me to be." Rachel Hayes, the environmental science major, the responsible daughter, the girl with a plan. I felt like I was suffocating in a life that was supposed to be mine, but didn't fit. She turned to look at Jennifer. "I tried, Mom. I really tried to be that person. But every day I woke up and pretended to be someone I wasn't, and it was killing me. I was having panic attacks. I couldn't breathe. I felt like I was drowning." "You could have talked to us," Jennifer said desperately. "We would have helped. You could have taken time off school, seen a therapist, whatever you needed. I knew you'd say that, and you would have meant it, but it wouldn't have fixed the fundamental problem. I didn't want the life I was living. Not just college, not just Portland. The whole thing. The expectations, the future everyone had planned for me, the person I was supposed to become." Rachel pulled her knees up to her chest. "I thought about it for months. I researched how to disappear. I knew it would hurt you, and that almost stopped me. But I also knew that if I stayed, I'd eventually hurt myself worse. I was barely hanging on. So you just left. You let us think you were dead for 7 years." "I know," Rachel said quietly. "I know it was cruel. I thought about calling, about sending a letter. But I knew if I did, you'd come looking for me. You'd try to bring me back. And I couldn't come back. I needed to be completely free to figure out who I actually was." Jennifer was crying openly. "Do you have any idea what these 7 years have been like? The not knowing, the searching. Your father hired private investigators. We spent our savings looking for you. We thought you'd been murdered, or hurt, or... I know, Rachel interrupted, tears running down her own face now. I know, and I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. That's why I finally sent the messages. I saw something online about a vigil you held on the 7th anniversary. I saw pictures of you and Dad and Ashley, and you all looked so broken. I couldn't carry that guilt anymore. I needed you to know I was alive. But you still won't come home. I can't, Rachel said firmly. This is my home now. I've built a life here. I have a job, friends, a community. I'm finally myself. Coming back would mean becoming Rachel Hayes again, and I can't go back to being her. In the surveillance van, Detective Chen was taking notes furiously, trying to process what she was hearing. This wasn't a kidnapping. It wasn't Stockholm Syndrome. Rachel had simply run away and stayed away by choice. What name do you use? Jennifer asked. Sarah Miller. I know it's generic, but that's the point. Nobody looks twice at a Sarah Miller. How did you do it? How does someone disappear for 7 years? Rachel shrugged. It's easier than you'd think if you're willing to live simply. I took the bus to Bend with about $800 I'd saved. I got a job at a hostel cleaning rooms. They paid cash, didn't ask for ID. I lived there for a few months, saved money, eventually rented a room in a house with some people who didn't ask questions. No ID? No social security number? I bought a fake ID from someone in Seattle. Not great quality, but good enough for most things. I work jobs that pay cash. I've worked at farms, cleaned houses, worked at farmers markets. You don't need a social security number for everything if you're creative. Jennifer tried to process this. Her daughter had been living as an entirely different person, working cash jobs, existing outside the normal system, only 160 miles away the whole time. What do you do now? I work at an organic farm outside Bend. I live in a small cabin on the property. I grow vegetables, 10 chickens, help with farmers market sales. It's simple and it's real, and I'm happy. And you never thought about us? Never missed us? Of course I thought about you, Rachel said, crying harder now. Every single day, especially at first. I missed you so much. But I also knew that if I let myself go back, I'd end up in the same dark place I was in before. I had to choose between your happiness and my survival. I chose survival. Jennifer and Rachel sat on that bench for over an hour. Jennifer asked questions, and Rachel answered them honestly, explaining 7 years of a life her family knew nothing about. She talked about the first months in Bend, living in a hostel, terrified someone would recognize her. She described the panic she'd felt every time she saw a missing person poster with her own face on it. She explained how she'd deliberately avoided social media, knowing that posting anything could give away her location. She'd cut her hair short at first, dyed it darker, wore different clothes than she used to. After a few years, when it seemed like the active search had died down, she'd let it grow back to its natural color. She talked about the friends she'd made, other people living on the margins, some running from their own pasts, some just preferring an alternative lifestyle. They'd accepted Sarah Miller without asking too many questions. Did you ever fall in love? Jennifer asked. Meet someone? Rachel smiled slightly. Yeah, his name is James. He works at the farm with me. He knows the truth. I told him everything about 6 months ago. He's been encouraging me to reach out to you. Is he here? Can I meet him? Not today. This needed to be just us. Detective Chen, listening to all of this, was grappling with an unusual situation. Rachel Hayes wasn't a victim of a crime. She was an adult who'd chosen to leave her life behind. There was no legal basis to force her to go home or to reveal her new identity publicly. Back on the bench, Jennifer was trying to understand something that felt incomprehensible. Rachel, I need to know. Are you really happy? Is this really what you want? Or is there part of you that wants to come home but feels like you can't? Rachel thought about this seriously. I'm really happy. This life, this simple, quiet life working with the earth and living honestly, this is what I needed. It's not what I would have chosen at 18 because I didn't know it was possible. But now that I've found it, I can't imagine going back. But what about us? What about your family? That's the hardest part, Rachel admitted. I love you. I love Dad and Ashley. But loving you doesn't mean I can be the person you remember. That Rachel doesn't exist anymore. I had to let her die so that I could live. So what happens now? Jennifer asked. You go back to your farm and we just... What? Never see you again? I don't know, Rachel said honestly. I thought seeing you today might give me clarity, but it hasn't. I still can't come back to Portland. I can't be Rachel Hayes again. But maybe there's some middle ground? Maybe we could see each other sometimes, here in Bend, without it being official. Your father and sister deserve to see you too. I know. And I want to see them. Maybe next time. The meeting was winding down. Rachel stood up, and Jennifer stood too, instinctively reaching for her daughter. This time, Rachel let her. Jennifer hugged her daughter for the first time in 7 years, holding on tight, breathing in the reality of her alive, solid, present. I'm sorry, Mom, Rachel whispered. I'm so sorry for the pain. I just want you to be okay. Jennifer said through tears, even if okay means you're not with us. They separated. Rachel put her sunglasses back on. I should go. James is waiting for me down in the parking lot. When will I hear from you again? Soon, I promise. And Mom, thank you for coming alone. Thank you for listening. Rachel walked away down the trail. Jennifer watched her go, watched her daughter disappear again, this time by choice. In the surveillance van, Detective Chen made a decision. Let her go. Don't follow her. Her team looked at her in surprise. But we could track her, find out where she lives. She's an adult who left voluntarily. She's not in danger. She doesn't want to be found. We have no legal reason to pursue this. Chen sighed. Sometimes our job is knowing when to let go. Jennifer walked slowly back down the trail to where Michael and Ashley were waiting. When they saw her face, they knew immediately that she'd seen Rachel. Is she okay? Ashley demanded. Where is she? Can we see her? Jennifer got in the car and told them everything. About the farm. About the name Sarah Miller. About the life Rachel had built. About how she was happy. Michael's reaction was immediate anger. She's happy? She put us through 7 years of hell and she's happy? She explained, Jennifer started. I don't care about her explanation. Michael's voice rose. She's selfish. She ran away and let us suffer. And now she expects us to what? Be okay with it? Ashley was quieter but equally hurt. Did she ask about me? Yes. She loves you. She wants to see you. But not enough to come home. The drive back to Portland was tense. Michael ranted about selfishness and responsibility. Ashley cried quietly. Jennifer sat in the middle, torn between relief that Rachel was alive and pain that she'd chosen this life over them. Over the next weeks, the Hayes family struggled to process what they'd learned. The police case was officially closed. Rachel Hayes was alive, an adult, living voluntarily under an assumed name. No crime had been committed beyond using a fake ID, which authorities decided not to pursue. The media got hold of the story and "Missing Woman Found Alive After 7 Years, Had Run Away by Choice" was a headline that went viral. The Hayes family became the subject of intense public scrutiny and judgment. Some people were sympathetic, understanding that Rachel must have been suffering to take such drastic action. Others were harsh, calling Rachel selfish, saying she should be charged with something for putting her family through such pain. Mental health advocates pointed to the case as an example of how society's expectations and pressures could push someone to desperate measures. Others argued that running away was never the answer, that Rachel should have sought help instead. The Hayes family refused most interview requests, wanting privacy to process their complicated grief. Because it was grief. Grief for the daughter who'd been gone, grief for the relationship that could never be what it was, grief for the 7 lost years. Rachel sent more messages over the following months. She met with Ashley in June, and with Michael in August. Both meetings were emotional, difficult, complicated. Ashley was angry at first, demanded to know why Rachel had abandoned her, why she'd let her big sister suffer. Rachel had no answer except that she'd been drowning and saw only one way out. Eventually, Ashley began to understand. She'd always sensed Rachel was struggling with something, had always felt like her little sister didn't quite fit in the life they were all living. She forgave Rachel, though the forgiveness was painful and incomplete. Michael took longer. His meeting with Rachel was stiff, awkward. He struggled to reconcile the daughter he remembered with this woman who'd chosen to disappear. He felt betrayed, hurt, angry. But he also saw that Rachel genuinely was happier, healthier, more herself than he'd ever seen her. "I don't understand your choice," he told her. "I probably never will, but I can see that you're okay, and I guess that has to be enough." By fall of 2019, the Hayes family had settled into an unusual new normal. Rachel remained in Bend, living as Sarah Miller, working at the farm. But she maintained regular contact with her family through texts and occasional visits. Jennifer drove to Bend once a month. She'd meet Rachel at various locations, coffee shops, hiking trails, the public library. They'd spend a few hours together, talking about Rachel's life, Jennifer's teaching, mundane things and deep things. These visits were bittersweet. Jennifer treasured the time with her daughter, but grieved that it had to be secret, that Rachel still wouldn't come home, that they couldn't have a normal mother-daughter relationship. Rachel introduced Jennifer to James, the man she'd been dating. He was 32, kind and quiet. Had been working at the same organic farm for 5 years. He knew Rachel's full story and accepted it, accepted her need for a simple private life. "He's good for her," Jennifer told Michael after meeting James. "He doesn't pressure her to be anything she's not." Michael had only visited Rachel twice since that first meeting. The trips were too painful, the conversations too loaded. He preferred the distance of text messages, the safety of not seeing his daughter living as someone else. Ashley visited more frequently. She and Rachel were slowly rebuilding their relationship, learning to be sisters again but differently. Rachel told Ashley stories about the farm, about her friends, about the life she'd built. Ashley talked about her job, her boyfriend, the ways Portland had changed. They'd never be as close as they were before. Too much had happened, too much trust had been broken. But they were finding a new version of sisterhood that worked for both of them. The Hayes family had to decide what to tell people. Did they announce that Rachel had been found? Did they keep it private? They chose a middle path. They told close family and friends that Rachel was alive and safe, but had chosen to live privately, and didn't want contact beyond immediate family. They asked people to respect Rachel's wishes and privacy. Most people were understanding. Some were judgmental, couldn't comprehend why parents would accept a daughter who'd put them through such hell. Jennifer stopped trying to explain to people who didn't want to understand. The support group for families of missing persons was complicated. Some members were thrilled that Rachel had been found alive. It gave them hope for their own missing loved ones. Others were quietly resentful. Why did the Hayes family get a happy ending when they were still searching? Linda Martinez, whose son had been missing for 12 years, pulled Jennifer aside at one meeting. "I'm happy for you that Rachel's alive. But I need you to understand that I can't come to these meetings anymore. Seeing your relief when I'm still in hell, it's too hard." Jennifer understood. She quietly stopped attending the support group, feeling guilty for having what others still desperately wanted. The media coverage eventually died down. The story had been interesting for a few news cycles, but public attention moved on. Occasionally, a true crime podcast would cover Rachel's case, usually framing it as a cautionary tale about mental health or societal pressure. Rachel never gave interviews, never spoke publicly about her experience. She maintained her privacy fiercely, understanding that once her new identity was fully public, she'd never be Sarah Miller again. She'd always be that girl who faked her disappearance. Jennifer started seeing a therapist to process her complicated feeling, relief that Rachel was alive, anger that she'd been lied to for 7 years, grief for the relationship they'd lost, guilt for feeling angry when she should just be grateful Rachel was okay. "It's possible to feel all those things at once," her therapist told her. "Grief isn't simple. Family isn't simple. You're allowed to be both grateful and hurt." Michael processed differently. He threw himself into work, spent less time dwelling on what had happened. He texted Rachel occasionally, brief messages checking that she was okay. He couldn't handle more than that yet. Ashley found a support group for siblings of missing persons and met other people whose brothers and sisters had disappeared. Hearing their stories helped her process her own experience, helped her understand that complicated family dynamics were normal. By the first anniversary of finding Rachel, March 2020, the Hayes family had established new rhythms. They weren't the family they'd been before Rachel left, but they weren't defined solely by tragedy anymore either. Jennifer had learned to live with uncertainty, with things not being resolved neatly. Rachel was alive, but wouldn't come home. They had a relationship, but it wasn't normal. There were no clean answers. Rachel sent a long text message to her family on April 12, 2020, the 8th anniversary of her disappearance. "I know I've said this before, but I need to say it again. I'm sorry for the pain I caused. I understand if you never fully forgive me. What I did was selfish, even if it was also survival. I want you to know that I think about you every day. I'm grateful that you've accepted me as I am now, even though I'm not who you wanted me to. I love you all." Rachel, Jennifer, Michael, and Ashley each responded in their own ways. Jennifer: "I love you, sweetie. I'm grateful you're in my life in whatever way you can." Michael: "Still processing everything, but glad you're okay." Ashley: "Love you, sis. Still mad at you sometimes, but love you." The pandemic of 2020 brought new challenges. Jennifer couldn't visit Rachel in person for months. They did video calls instead, which felt both better and worse, seeing Rachel's face on a screen but not being able to hug her. Rachel and James got married in a small ceremony at the farm in September 2020. Only Jennifer, Michael, and Ashley attended, along with a few of Rachel's friends who knew her as Sarah Miller. It was strange watching her daughter get married under a false name, but Jennifer tried to focus on the joy. Rachel was happy. Rachel had found love. Rachel was building a life. The wedding photos showed a relaxed, smiling Rachel in a simple white dress, standing in a field with mountains in the background. She looked peaceful. She looked like herself in a way she never had in old photos from her Portland life. By 2021, 3 years after Rachel had first sent that message, the Hayes family had found their equilibrium. It wasn't the family structure any of them had expected, but it worked. Rachel remained in Bend, now going by Sarah Miller legally. She'd petitioned the court for a legal name change, citing personal safety reasons, and it had been granted. She had a driver's license, a bank account, a social security number, all under her new name. She and James were considering starting a family. Rachel had asked Jennifer how she felt about becoming a grandmother to a child who would know her as Grandma Jennifer, but would never know the full story of their mother's past. Jennifer struggled with this. How do you be a grandmother in secret? How do you love a grandchild while maintaining lies? "I don't want my children to grow up with secrets and lies," Jennifer told Rachel. "That's what hurt us so much, the years of not knowing." "I'll tell them the truth when they're old enough to understand," Rachel promised. "They'll know I'm Rachel Hayes from Portland who chose to become Sarah Miller. They'll know about you and Dad and Ashley. But they'll grow up knowing Sarah, not Rachel, because Rachel doesn't exist anymore." Michael had made peace with Rachel's choice mostly. He still didn't fully understand it, still sometimes felt angry about the 7 lost years. But he'd accepted that Rachel was an adult making adult decisions about her own life. "I thought parents were supposed to know their kids," he told Jennifer one night. "But I clearly didn't know Rachel at all. Didn't know she was suffering enough to run away. Didn't know she had it in her to disappear for 7 years." "Maybe we can't ever fully know another person," Jennifer suggested. "Even our children. They're separate people with their own inner lives we can't access." Ashley had processed her feelings through therapy and time. She understood now that Rachel's disappearance wasn't about her, wasn't about their relationship. Rachel had been drowning and had found the only life raft she could see. "I wish she'd talk to us instead of just leaving," Ashley told her therapist. "But I also understand why she felt like she couldn't. Sometimes the people who love you most are the hardest to disappoint." The Hayes family established new traditions. They met in Bend for Rachel's birthday every year. They did video calls on major holidays. Rachel and James visited Portland occasionally, though Rachel felt uncomfortable there, surrounded by memories of a life she'd escaped. Jennifer documented everything in a journal, every visit, every conversation, every update from Rachel's life. She was creating a record of these years, evidence that Rachel was alive and happy, even if it was in a way they'd never expected. The journal entries showed the evolution of Jennifer's feelings. March 2019. "I saw Rachel today. She's alive, but she won't come home. I don't know how to feel. Grateful and devastated at the same time." June 2019. "Visited Rachel in Bend again. She showed me the farm where she works. It's beautiful there. I can see why she loves it. But I still don't understand why this required disappearing for 7 years." December 2019. Rachel called on Christmas. We talked for an hour. It felt almost normal. Maybe we can have a relationship, even if it's not the one I imagine. September 2020. Rachel's wedding was today. She looked so happy. I cried the whole time. Happy tears and sad tears all mixed up. April 2021. 8 years since she left. 9 years since she first contacted us. I'm learning to accept that this is how our family works now. It's not what I wanted, but it's what we have. The media occasionally revisited Rachel's story, especially on anniversaries or when similar cases emerged. Rachel always declined to participate, maintaining her privacy. One documentary filmmaker wanted to tell Rachel's story as an exploration of societal pressure and mental health. Rachel refused but gave permission for her family to participate if they wanted. Jennifer, Michael, and Ashley each gave interviews, sharing their perspectives on the 7 years of searching and the complicated aftermath of finding Rachel alive. Jennifer talked about the relief of knowing Rachel was alive mixed with the grief of losing the relationship they. Michael discussed his anger and his slow process of acceptance. Ashley spoke about rebuilding trust with a sister who'd abandoned her. The documentary, titled The Girl Who Disappeared by Choice, aired in 2022 and sparked conversations about mental health, family expectations, and the right to choose your own life even if it hurts the people who love you. Some viewers were sympathetic to Rachel, understanding her need to escape. Others condemned her as selfish, argued that her freedom came at too high a cost to her family. Rachel watched the documentary alone in her cabin in Bend. She cried seeing her parents and sister talk about the years of pain, the not knowing, the desperate searching. She called Jennifer afterward. "I watched it. I'm sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry." "I know, sweetheart. We know you are. Do you think you'll ever fully forgive me?" Jennifer thought about this carefully. "I forgive you for leaving. I understand you were suffering and saw no other option. What's harder to forgive is the 7 years of silence. You could have sent a message after 1 year, or 2 years, letting us know you were alive. That's the part that still hurts." "You're right," Rachel admitted. "By the time I was ready to make contact, so much time had passed that it felt impossible. Every year made it harder to reach out. I'm sorry. I know that doesn't fix anything, but I am." Rachel Hayes' story offers difficult lessons about family, identity, mental health, and the sometimes unbearable weight of expectation. Rachel wasn't suffering from a diagnosable mental illness that treatment could have fixed. She was experiencing existential distress, a fundamental mismatch between who she was and who she was expected to be. She'd tried to conform, tried to be Rachel Hayes with the environmental science major and the planned future. But the effort of maintaining that identity was slowly destroying her. Mental health isn't just about diagnosable disorders. It's also about living authentically, about being able to be yourself. When that's not possible, people make desperate choices. Rachel's case raises uncomfortable questions about autonomy and family obligation. Does a person have the right to abandon their family if staying is destroying them? At what point does self-preservation justify causing pain to others? These aren't questions with clear answers. Rachel made a choice that saved her life but devastated her family. Both things are true simultaneously. Rachel felt trapped by expectations, her parents' hopes, society's norms, the life trajectory that had been planned for her. She couldn't see a way to deviate from that path while staying in her old life. This speaks to how rigid our social structures can be, how difficult it is to say, "This life isn't for me," without being seen as a failure. Rachel's extreme solution, complete disappearance, was drastic, but it came from feeling like there was no acceptable middle ground, no way to change her life without disappointing everyone. The Hayes family discovered that finding a missing person alive doesn't provide the happy ending you'd expect. Rachel was alive, but the relationship was permanently altered. Trust was broken. Years were lost. Nothing could go back to how it was. This is a reality many families of long-term missing persons face when their loved one. The reunion is complicated, messy, often painful, even as it's also joyful. One of the most painful aspects of Rachel's story is that she felt unable to communicate her struggles to her family. She assumed they wouldn't understand, wouldn't accept her need to live differently. Whether that assumption was accurate is debatable. Jennifer insists they would have supported Rachel in finding her own path. But Rachel didn't believe that was possible while maintaining family relationships. This highlights the importance of creating family environments where people feel safe expressing doubt, confusion, desire to deviate from expected paths. Rachel's story doesn't fit neatly into victim narratives. She wasn't kidnapped or held against her will. She left by choice and stayed away by choice. But she also wasn't simply selfish or cruel. She was a person in crisis who saw only one way out. Both things are true. She caused immense pain to her family. She also saved her own life. Life rarely offers clear moral judgments. People make choices in impossible situations and everyone pays a price. The Hayes family had to learn to live in ambiguity. Rachel was alive but wouldn't come home. They had contact but not the relationship they wanted. There was no clean resolution, no tidy ending. This is more common than stories usually admit. Many family situations exist in gray areas, relationships that are complicated, painful, but also containing love. People who've hurt each other but are still connected. Bonds that are damaged but not completely broken. If there's one thing Rachel's story teaches, it's that people are more complicated than we assume. The responsible daughter, the good student, the girl with a plan. She was also someone drowning in expectations who felt she had only one way out. When someone in your life seems to be struggling, don't assume they'll ask for. Don't assume they trust you enough to be honest about their pain. Create space for hard conversations. Accept that people might need to live differently than you'd hoped. And if someone you love does disappear, know that sometimes they're running from a life they couldn't sustain, not from you. Rachel still lives in Bend, Oregon as Sarah Miller. She and James have a daughter now, born in 2022. Jennifer visits once a month, helps with childcare, is learning to be a grandmother in this unusual situation. Michael has met his granddaughter twice. It's still hard for him, but he's trying. Ashley is her niece's favorite aunt, drives to Bend often to spend time with the baby. The Hayes family has learned to exist in complexity, to accept a situation that will never be fully resolved. Rachel will never come home to Portland. She'll never be Rachel Hayes again, but she's alive, and she's in contact. And for a family that spent 7 years not knowing if their daughter was dead or alive, that has to be enough. The last entry in Jennifer's journal, written in March 2024. 5 years since Rachel first contacted us. Our granddaughter is almost 2 now. Rachel sent me a video of her first time petting a chicken at the farm. She was delighted and terrified at the same time. I watched it 20 times, crying and laughing. This is my life now. Loving my daughter and granddaughter from a distance, accepting a relationship that will never look like. It's not what I wanted. But it's real. And it's ours. And it's enough. If you're searching for a missing family member, Rachel's story offers both hope and caution. Hope, because it proves that people can be missing for years and still be alive, still be safe, still be found. 7 years of silence doesn't mean. It could mean someone chose to disappear. Caution, because finding them alive doesn't necessarily mean getting them back. They might have reasons for staying away. They might have built new lives they're unwilling to leave. Please understand the devastation you'll cause. Your family will spend years in agony, not knowing if you're dead or alive. They'll spend money they don't have searching for you. They'll blame themselves, wondering what they did wrong. There are other options. You can create boundaries while staying in contact. You can live your own life without vanishing completely. You can communicate your needs even if you think people won't understand. Disappearing should be an absolute last resort, not a first option. And if you do choose to leave, please find a way to let your family know you're alive. Even an anonymous message saying, "I'm safe, please stop searching," would spare them years of torture. Jennifer Hayes wants you to know that you'll survive this. The not knowing is unbearable, but humans are capable of carrying unbearable things. Join support groups, connect with other families facing similar situations. Don't isolate yourself in grief. Keep searching if you need to, but also allow yourself to keep living. Your missing loved one would want you to have a life, not to spend every moment frozen in pain. And if you do find them alive, prepare for the reunion to be complicated. You might not get the ending you imagine. They might be different. The relationship might be damaged beyond full repair. But knowing they're alive, even if they're not coming home, is still valuable. It's still better than the alternative of never knowing. Rachel's case reminds us that not all missing persons are victims of crimes. Some people choose to disappear because they're running from lives they couldn't sustain. This doesn't make their family's pain any less real, but it does complicate the narrative we usually tell about missing persons. Society needs to create more room for people to live authentically, to deviate from expected paths without completely disappearing. We need to reduce the pressure and judgment that makes some people feel like vanishing is their only option. In 2023, Rachel wrote a letter to be shared with other people considering disappearing. With her permission, Jennifer included it in the documentary. If you're thinking about disappearing, I understand. I know what it feels like to be drowning in a life that doesn't fit. I know the desperation of feeling trapped with no way out. But please, before you do what I did, try everything else first. Talk to someone, a therapist, a friend, anyone who might understand. Try creating boundaries. Try changing your life while staying in contact with family. Try anything that doesn't involve causing the people who love you 7 years of agony. I saved my own life by leaving. I also destroyed parts of my family that will never be whole again. Both things are true. I have to live with both realities. If you do decide to leave, at least send one message letting people know you're alive. Don't make them search for years wondering if you're dead in a ditch somewhere. That's the one thing I wish I'd done differently. I wish I'd let them know sooner that I was okay. And know this: you can never fully come back. Once you disappear, once you become someone else, you can never completely return to who you were. Make sure the life you're running to is worth more than the life you're leaving behind. I'm happy now. I'm finally myself. But I still carry the guilt of what I put my family through. That never goes away. Rachel's story asks us to think about how we treat the people in our lives. Do we create space for them to be honest about struggling? Do we pressure them to follow paths that might not fit who they are? Do we make it safe for people to say, I need to live differently, without judgment or rejection? These are hard questions, but maybe by asking them, we can prevent someone else from feeling like complete disappearance is their only option. The Hayes family's story continues. It's messy and complicated and not fully resolved. But they're together in the way they can be, loving each other across distance and pain and broken trust. Sometimes, that's all families can do. Keep loving even when things are broken. Keep trying even when reconciliation is incomplete. Keep moving forward even when there's no perfect ending. Rachel Hayes disappeared on April 12, 2012, and became Sarah Miller. Rachel's family lost 7 years to not knowing, then had to learn to love the daughter who chose to stay gone. There are no easy answers. There's just the complicated reality of people trying to survive and trying to love each other, despite everything that's been broken.